Hey guys, so here we are retouching our with and in bathroom that they did in Portola Valley, this amazing home of Susan's. And this bathroom had an outdoor shower, so I thought, well, why not utilize this outdoor shower? And plus the water doesn't really show up unless there's a person in it. So luckily we were able to get ourselves a model, and we produced this photo, which I think is stunning. We woke up at 6 a.m. to shoot it with a sunrise. However, the sun didn't come out. There was overcast, so we had to do this shot with artificial light. And with that came a bunch of different issues, because the outdoors is very blue, as you can see, and it doesn't look sunlit. So we had to shoot another background once the sun came out, but it didn't match all that well. So the real issue of this shot is to try and get the background cloned in, and the trouble with that is there's water falling down, and you can't really take the water, cut the water out of the background, because it's a lot of little white specks and streaks. So what we had to do is kind of fudge it a little bit, and you'll see how I do it. But what I figured out is basically I can sort of blend the background in and then color correct and actually use dodge and burn to paint in some of the cloud effects. So there was a lot of messing around with these layers to get this to fit right. But in the end, I think it turned out pretty good. Here I am blending it in. I'm trying different things. So if you're watching this in slow motion, which I suggest you do, if you wanted to watch it slower, you can, in YouTube, you can put it on half speed. But here I am looking for the colors, looking for where they are. I use curves to manage my colors a lot because I feel like it gives me a lot more control. I like the little finger tool in the curves palette in the upper left there. That really just allows me to go straight into the scene, pick the point where I want to change the color, and it'll show up as a dot on my curve line. So it's really helpful. And with that and a combination of hue saturation, I'm able to get it right. Here I am finding the right brush to kind of fake my cloud dodge and burn, and that's not quite right, so I'm playing with the scatter, I'm playing with the multiple brush presets, or ability to make brush presets here. Really tapping into all of my knowledge there. And if you want to learn about brushes, you can go to there's a bunch of different tutorials online that you can go to. There's one particular one called Control Paint, which I just love, so I'll put that link down at the bottom for you. Okay, and as with a lot of my images, I like to use smoke, and as you can see, I have a lot of different types of smoke that I purchased from Flurn.com, and it's all shot on black background, so it's really easy for me just to put it in, set it to screen mode, and get that in there. And sometimes the smoke allows me to hide different things, so if there's some imperfection in how the background is matching up with the fall of the water there, I'm using a little bit of smoke to hide it, but also as to add to the atmosphere of the scene. Here I am using there is an ability for you to transform your clone tool, so that was what that was, if you wanted to go back and pause it and see. Doing some final cleanup here of the bathroom. I did put in a different shower head at the very beginning, you can see, and shooting with a 17mm tilt and shift, Canon tilt and shift lens, perspective control, but it's not perfect. And whether this shower head was parallel to the ground or our lens distorted it a little bit, we needed to fix it. So that's what I did there. Okay, going back into Lightroom, I do kind of use a combination of Lightroom and Photoshop. I use Photoshop for the big structural changes, and then I'll use Lightroom to do the overall brightness, contrast, color, exposure, that kind of thing. And then sometimes I'll bounce around, go back and forth. But I think it's a pretty good workflow for me. I like using Lightroom because you can do a lot very quickly. And as with all of my images, I do stop and take a look at it for a while, study it, think about what else needs to be added. I love a little solar flare, but really muting it down, lowering the opacity, and also doing some Gaussian blur on it to make it as natural as possible, and then painting in only the parts that I want to show. And earlier you saw that I added a little color flare around with the lights coming through too. Here I am, because we shot this basically in the pitch black of the morning, her shadows in her arm are picking up a very dark blue sky. And in the color that we're in now, it just doesn't look right. So I spent some time trying to figure out how to get the color to be right there. All right, there we go. So back to adjusting the color of the arm, looking for adding some magenta, taking out some green, adding a little bit of yellow, and you can see my curve is a little wonked out. It's not a very straightforward color shift. Okay. Here I am playing with the clouds again, trying to get that to really match in, be really just a seamless transition there. Right. Cleaning it up, I'm using a foliage brush to give it a texture, because otherwise, if you're just blending it in, sometimes, you know, with a tree like that, you just can't brush it in with a regular brush. So picking a brush like a foliage brush just gives you that little bit of texture to create an edge with. Okay, so now I'm really going in and really dodging and burning those clouds to get it to match. Studying the image some more, organizing my layers. I'm terrible about organizing my layers because I like to just go fast. So once in a while I have to go backwards and look through my layers, and in order to do that with some efficiency, I'll go back and rename some of the layers and group them just to keep things clean. Because in most of my images I end up with 20-30 layers, and it's just out of control. Okay, doing some final cleanup, getting rid of anything that's sort of distracting from the feeling of the image. Okay, here we are. Back in Lightroom, just studying it, looking it over, making sure there's nothing else I wanted to change. Okay, and in Lightroom there's this great perspective control tool. I just love it. So I use that instead of the manual vertical and horizontal transform. And there it is, the final image. Hope you enjoyed this. If you like this kind of material, please remember to click like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.